Okay, good. Otherwise, all right, I'm going to start us right away with the sponsors. All right, learning sponsors. Paula and Bob Bromberg in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. In memory of Malcolm Mann, former member and family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Shall share her children and grandchildren in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva. Marsha Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Oriel Paul Federbush, Oriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon. Sharon and Fred Liska, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Ethel Bas Yaakov. Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gitler, Avrameir ben Shimon, and Martha Gitler, China Bas Yeshaya. Friends of Toby Paris, Saratova Bad Yisrael Dov. Friends of Malka Levi, Malka Bad Yosef. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim. The many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi. Okay. In terms of month of learning, Haran and Mel Haller in memory of her father, Yosef Eliezer ben Tzvi Hirsch. B. Pizer in memory of her father, Yisachadov ben Shmuel. Mordechai and Miriam Burr in memory of his mother, Manya Bas Rav Shimon Halevi. Also, Cheryl Scher in honor of those who joined her first series of epistemology tefillah classes. Week of Learning by David and Mindel Cheslow in memory of his father, Moshe ben Ruvain Mordechai, by Susan and Ron Podolsky in memory of her father, Simcha Bunam ben Yehoshua, by Michael and Judith Poretsky in memory of his mother, Rachel Bas Avram, by Jack Gilman in memory of his brother, Zev Yosef ben Yitzchak, by Sharon and Michael Glass in memory of her mother, Chaya Bas Avram Baruch, by Susan and Ron Podolsky in memory of her mother, Chaya Bas Avraham Dov. Yesterday was actually a day of learning by Rosalind Hamada in memory of her mother, Devorah Bat Eliyahu. Today, a day of learning by Judy and Bob Thaler in memory of her father, Moshe Bendit ben Avraham Yitzchak. For Shabbos, Shoshana Lav and the Plotzker and Toring families in memory of their husband, father, and grandfather, Shimon ben Avraham. And also Shabbos, Barbara and Bill Ganonsky in memory of her father, Avram ben Elchanan. May the Shemas have an Aliyah, Crank, Rafia, Velti, Yeshir, Shem, Atliah, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good gebenched Yar. Okay. I had problem getting on this morning. Anybody else?
I can get in.
Yeah, all right. I will have
I think
to.
we all had the same problem, but thank God we're back.
Okay.
Nope, no problem.
Well, good for you.
Ah.
Okay.
Oh, you come in late.
All right. Where are we? On Yud Tet, Amud Aleph, New Halacha. Right? Okay. Remember we said we were dealing with a variety of examples, 13 bowings, 13 tables, 13 chests, and the money for the priority was we discussion as to the various titles of the chest. Okay, 6 were for Nidava, and the other 6 or 7 were for various items. Okay, and our point today is going to be continuing the discussion, really. Okay, and we're going to see that there's a question about what happens if money is found on the ground near a chest. Which shofar chest does it belong to? Okay, so that's where we're picking up today. Halacha, hey, matniten our Mishnah. Hama'ot shenimtza'u, coins that were found, we have to understand on the floor or on the ground. Bein hashkalim, okay, linedava. So the Mishnah is telling us between the shofar chest that was for the new shkalim and the one of those 6 that was near the nidava, the free will offering. Okay? Right? So a question might be, what was the shape as to how the coins, how the shofar chests were displayed? Were they displayed in a straight row, or were they displayed in another format? Okay. So it says if there were these coins found between these 2 shofar chests, karov l'shakalim, yiplu l'shakalim. If it's closer to the chest for new shkalim, it goes to that. L'nidava, yiplu l'nidava. If it's closer to that one, it goes to that one. So apparently, it would appear, that's why I say it that way, that proximity would be the defining attribute to determine the location of coins found on the floor. Mechza o mechza. However, what happens if it's between exactly the 2 of them? Yiplu l'nidava. It would go instead to the nidava, the voluntary offerings. Now, another example, bein eitzim lelevona. What happens if the coins are found between the chest for wood and the chest for frankincense? Karov le'eitzim yiplu le'eitzim. Closer to the one for wood, it goes to the wood. Lelevona yiplu lelevona. Closer to the one for incense, it goes for incense. Mechze lemechze, yiplu lelevona. Okay, if it's exactly between the 2 of them, it goes to the incense. Okay, now again, that seems to tell us maybe proximity is not always the criteria. Okay, that's used. Let's go on. Bein kanim legozle olah. If it falls on the ground, the coins between the nests and the chest for young birds. Karov l'kanin yiplu l'kinin. If it's closer to that one for the nests, it goes to that. Karov l'gozle olah yiplu l'gozle olah. If it's closer to the one for the young birds, it goes to the young birds. Mechze olah mechze. If it's between exactly the 2, yiplu l'gozle olah. It goes to the young birds. Okay. Again, so we're going to have to question clearly whether proximity is the criteria or whether there's something else that's a criteria. Okay. Bein chulin l'maaser sheni. If it goes for the one that's chulin and maaser sheni, again, karov l'chulin yiplu l'chulin. If it's closer to the one for ordinary coins, it goes to that one. The maaser sheni, if it's closer to the one for maaser sheni, yiplu the maaser sheni, it goes to that one. Mechze lemechze yiplu the maaser sheni. If it's between the 2 of them, it goes to maaser sheni. Now we come zeh haklal. Now we come to our, hopefully, a conclusion for the moment. Holchin achar hakarov lahakel. Okay, generally, it seems that proximity is an important criterion, okay, by which the closer ones, that's when we're lenient. Mechze lemechze lahachmir. But when we're equidistant, we go to the one that's more stringent. Okay, if you're using Art Scroll, look at note number 10 on 19A2. Okay. As in any other case of uncertainty in biblical law, we are required to assume a stringent possibility and act accordingly. Okay? So, apparently, proximity is the general criteria, but not always the case. So therefore, the issue might be, on what basis do we say that one is more stringent than the other? Let's see if the Gemara will now answer that question. So the Gemara, however, starts us off with a new question. Lo hutzracha de lo ben shkalim lekeni. Wouldn't it not be necessary to only ask our question if the coins were found on the floor between the shofar chest for new shkalim and that of kinim and that of nests? Okay, doesn't that seem to be the only two that should be close together? Rabbi Avin b'shem Rabbi Pinchas kimin buchliar hayu asuin, that they were made in a circle or a semicircle. So on 19A3, if you're using Art Scroll, you see a diagram as to the example of the 6 voluntary ones were towards the bottom, okay? And the others were all towards the top, okay? And here we can see in this diagram that it was between one of the voluntary ones and one of the new. It was our first issue in the Mishnah. But if that's the case, we could ask the same kind of question in young birds, which the Mishnah did ask, or between wood and frankincense, which the Mishnah did ask, but we could still raise the issue between young birds and wood, or between frankincense and gold vessels, right? So that's why the Art Scroll diagram has some areas shaded, I'm suggesting, and some areas question mark, as the legend in the diagram shows, okay? That the Mishnah shows certain questions, but doesn't ask questions about the others, okay? And maybe it could have asked why it doesn't discuss those. Now we can come back into the text, okay? So he claims, Rabbi Abun, in the name of Rabbi Pinchas, that it was done circular. Hayosin. Mechza lemechza yiplu lenedava. Okay, where it says half and half, it went to the voluntary offering. Okay, I'm going to include in parenthesis, lo tzurcha ledalo mechza lemechza yiplu l'shkalim. Doesn't it seem more reasonable, asks the Gemara, that it should go to the shkalim, to the new shkalim then? After all, don't you want people to pay their current requirement as opposed to a free will offering? So the Gemara comes back. Eat debaye mema. It's possible that one could ask and say the following. Shema yiplu l'shirei halishka. Maybe instead, coins that fall on the floor should be considered like leftover, the same way any coins that after the withdrawals from the lishka, those are left over, and therefore those should be applied to bedek habayit and not applied to any offering. Okay, it debaye mema. It's possible, necessary to say here, mechze lemechze kamisha meit, or maybe we might argue and say that the leftover coins on the floor are similar to those of a status of a person who has died. In other words, they have no owner, and therefore they can't be used for kapara, for atonement, or for any other purpose. Amar Rabbi Yossi, says Rabbi Yossi, ad ana tmanan. Okay, she says to us, Rabbi Yossi, that when I was there, namely in Bavel, okay, Shema'et, I heard the voice called Rav Yehuda, of Rav Yehuda. Sha'al v'Shmuel, and he asked Shmuel the following shaila. Hifrish kalo umet, if one designated their shekel and then, in other words, they had separated it, put it aside, and then that owner died. Amarle yiplu l'nidava. Okay, Shmuel answered, it went to a voluntary free will offering. Now, motar, okay, asirit ha'efa shalom. Okay, so what about what was left over? Okay, in another issue with the amount of the asirit ha'efa, the Kohen Gadol's offering. Okay, that's left over. Can we make a comparison to that? Okay, what happens to that with those coins on the floor? Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Yolichem liyam hamelech, that whatever is left over from the Kohen Gadol's offering, that gets tossed out into the sea. Maybe the same thing should be done with those coins. Rabbi Eliezer Amar, Yiplu l'nedava. Rabbi Eliezer says, no, again, they go to a voluntary offering. Vikashya, says the Gemara. Indeed, this is problematic. Why? V'yesh chatat kreva ola. Is it possible we could have a situation then where when a woman who pays for kini, all right, if she's a yoledet, she has to bring two korbanot, two birds, one for olah and one for a chatat. Okay? And therefore you're saying that that money which should have been directed for a chatat is going to go through as a nidava for an olah. Is that the case? Chizkiah, okay? Achi b'shem Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. So again, Chizkiah in the name of Reish Lakish. Tana'ai beit dinhu. There was condition on the part of the court. Al hamotarot sheyikravu olot. That any leftover, okay, items would be given as free will, as burnt offerings. Now, given that statement, the Gemara naturally asks, Ha'isha hazot b'mehi mitkaperet. If that's the case, if it's a zava or a yoledet, okay, how does she then gain atonement if both of her offerings went as burnt offerings, olot, and one didn't go as a chatas? Okay, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Tanai Beit Dinhu. Again, there's a condition on the part of the court, Hamisapek etakini, that the column storekeeper who provided or the Kohen in charge of the department of in that situation, giving out the birds, who misapek etapsulot. It is his responsibility also to give any replacement, I'm going to say offerings, for any offering that becomes invalid. So if that's the case, if that offering was disqualified for some reason, because it went from the status of a chatat to an olah, she is entitled to get another offering, another bird, to be able to satisfy her other requirement. That's the point. Okay. So, again, a new statement. Lo tzurcha de lo, okay? And it's not necessary to say this. This is like in the Bavel language, lo nitzracha ella, bein kturat le'etzim le'levona. Wasn't it necessary, or is it not necessary that we should have asked in our Mishnah also between the status of the chest for ketoret, le'etzim, to that of wood, or le'levona, or to that of between the incense and what's next to it, le'zahav kaporet, or between that example, okay, of the gold for serving, okay, and the levona. So that back on 19A3, our diagram, shows those three areas where there are questions. Okay, and that's what the Gemara is asking here. Shouldn't we have asked in our Mishnah about coins found between these other examples? So the Gemara now answers, V'tanita v'sofa, but it's really answered at the end of our Mishnah, where it says, Zeh haklal, this is the general principle, Holchin echar hakarov, that we do use the principle of proximity, okay, when it's appropriate. However, mechza lemechza lahachmir. However, when it is a situation where the coins are found exactly in between the two chests, we go to the more stringent. Okay, and here, what can we say is the more stringent? All we can say in this case, right, is basically that it's the more significant offering, right? Okay, we may come back to this, not immediately, however. Halacha bet matnitin. Again, what about other loose coins? And so the Gemara wants to clarify Mishnah, and then the Gemara goes into that as we continue. Okay? Ma'ot shenimtza'u lefnei sochrei behema. Okay? We know that people would go to the, let's say, the market and to the stalls where they sold the animals, particularly if a person was bringing ma'aser sheni, right? They wouldn't necessarily bring their animal from the Galilee into Jerusalem to slaughter it and eat it, etc., and cook it, etc., etc. It made a lot more sense to deconsecrate, okay, the animal from or the money, okay, bring the money to Jerusalem, buy the food there, buy the meat there, buy these things there, and eat it there, because that was part of the requirement of Ma'aser Sheni. So let's say, says the Mishnah, that we find loose coins by the stalls of the animal sellers, right? Le'olam Ma'aser. We can generally assume that this is going to be Ma'aser Sheni money. However, says the Mishnah going on, Ubahar, say we find loose coins on the Temple Mount, right, in the area of the Azara, right? Bahar Ubahar Bayit, Chulin, we're going to say those coins are deconsecrated. They're chulin. Why? Because people generally were not encouraged, I won't go so far as to say prohibited, but certainly not encouraged to bring coins on the temple precinct. Okay? Ubirushalayim, and in regards to the city itself, Bashar kol yomot hashana chulin. Most of the year, we would say, found coins are deconsecrated. They're not holy. Ubashat haregel, but during the time of the 3 pilgrimage festivals, when the city is crowded, right, with people coming to observe the holiday at the Beis HaMikdash, what happens? Hakol ma'aser. Our assumption is going to be, again, that it's ma'aser sheni money, that's loose money. Because people could have said, oh, I'll wait till I go to the temple, and that's when I'll bring my ma'aser sheni, when I come next Pesach, or I come on Shavuos, or whatever. Okay? Now, let's raise the following example. Basar shenimtza ba'azara. What happens if we find loose pieces of meat, okay? And they're found in the temple precinct, in the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, okay? So remember, we know let's say the area of the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodshim and all of that was one location. Then you had another area, right? So let's say that's the case. Evarim olot. If there are basically pieces of meat, they're considered to be burnt offerings. Okay? So those are evarim, those sections that would have normally been used as offerings. Okay. Now, chatichot, smaller pieces, chataot. Okay, they would be considered, okay, just pieces. Those would have been burnt and used for chatas. Uvyushalayim. But what happens if I find pieces of meat, other parts of the city? Zivchei shlamim. They are going to be considered peace offerings. So the Gemara Mishnah continues. Zeh v'zeh to uvar tzurato v'yitzei beit hasreifa. If that's the case, says this Mishnah, both this and this, okay? If this meat is found, okay, and we have a question about its status, okay, we put it aside, we let it decay, and then, okay, we bring it to the Beit Hasreifa. Nimtza b'gvulin. If, however, we find pieces of meat out in the suburbs, in the provinces, evarim, if it's larger pieces that normally would have been burnt on the Mizbeach, right? Nevelot, we're going to automatically consider that as nevela, okay, as the part of the carcass of a dead animal. The chatichot, and smaller pieces, okay, mutarot, those are permitted. In other words, permitted to be cooked and to be eaten. If it's, okay. However, the Mishnah continues, Uvisha'at haregel. However, during the time of the Shlosh Regalim, shahabasa meruba, when meat is plentiful. Okay, in other words, more people tend to eat meat, buy meat, bring meat, whatever. Okay, merubin af evarim mutarot. Then even the larger portions that normally we would have thought would have been directed to the Beis Hamikdash, those can be considered permitted to be cooked and eaten. Okay, now, Gemara asks the following shaila at the beginning. Lo tzurcha de lo bahar habayit kodesh. Isn't it not appropriate that we should have stated or asked that in this case, coins found in the Har Habayit, in the Temple Mount, shouldn't they have been considered kodesh, consecrated? Rebbe Ba, Rabbi Chia. So Rabbi Ba, in the name of Rabbi Chia, stated b'shem Rabbi Yochanan as follows. Chazakah, we have this Masorah. She'ein hakohen motzi min halishka me'ot ad shehu mechalalan al habehema. That a kohen does not, okay, carry any coins out of the lishka, okay, in the temple area, unless it has been deconsecrated first on the animal, okay? And you can see note number 4 on 19b1, okay? That goes into a little bit of detail on that. Okay, going on. Basar shenimtza. What about the meat we said that's found? Okay. Rebbe Lazer, b'shem Rebbe Oshaya, tells us as follows. Okay. Hisiya da'at ta'un ibor tzura. Okay. In his opinion, this is similar to a situation where a person diverted their attention. Okay. In other words, when you're slaughtering the animal, and we learned in Chulin, and you diverted your attention, we say at that point it's pasul. So here too, couldn't we argue that in this situation, meat that's just found, so to speak, lying around in the Har Habayit, regardless of what its size, okay, should we consider it totally puzzle because it's like you see a dog, okay? And therefore should allow to decay and therefore then been burnt in the Beit Sreifa. Amar Rebbe Yoshia, Matniten Amra came to Uvar Tzurato, V'yitzela Beit HaSreifa. Indeed, says Rabbi Yoshia, that's what our Mishnah teaches, that you allow it to decay, okay, and then you bring it out to the Beit Sreifa. However, Rama Rabbi Yossi, V'yeot, he says, and indeed, that's said appropriately. La'achlo ein at yochal. To eat it, you're not able to do so. Shema nitkalkel tzurato, because perhaps it's already started to decay. Interesting. In other words, not the sacred quality of that meat is under question, but the very hygienic issue of that meat is under question. Lafum came, and therefore was the result, tzrich memar to uvar tzurato v'yitzei lebeit hasreifa. That's why our Mishnah argues that you allow it to certainly continue to decay, since it may have started, and then you bring it out and have it burnt in the place of burning. Okay, we come back in our Mishnah to the next section. What about if this meat was found in the provinces? Nimtza bigvuli. So we're introduced to a new person here, by the way, Rabbi Crispa. Okay, I didn't have a chance to look up in who or what he was, but maybe we'll find out eventually. B'shem Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina. So Rabbi Crispa says, in the name of Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Chanina, Evarim Nevelot. We say that these Evarim, okay, that these larger limbs of the animal that we said normally would have been handled on the Mizbeach, are now to be considered Nevelot, carcasses, right? Lokin alehen mishum nevela. And if a person were to eat them, okay, we would say he gets malchus because of eating nevela. Matnita amrache. And our Mishnah seems to imply this is the case by saying Evarei nevelot v'chatichot motarot. Okay, so he's trying to derive something from this statement, because the Mishnah simply said the limbs are nevelas, smaller pieces are permitted. So he's going to now darshan, so to speak, explain it the following. Chatichot motarot, the fact that our Mishnah said that the smaller pieces are permitted, lo mamash, isn't that not really the case? It says, v'dechavta evarim nevelot, and therefore we could be derive from that since it says these ones are permitted, the implication is that the other ones are not going to be permitted. Right? Udechavta evarim nevelot, and the fact that therefore the evarim would not be permitted, loki alehen mishum nevela, that therefore one would need to be punished with malchus if one ate them. Okay, since Rabbi Crispa gave one statement, we find another by him. Okay, Rabbi Crispa b'shem Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina. Again, im hayu machrozot mutarot. He says, if these pieces of meat, however, were strung on a string like beads, okay, they are permitted. Why is he saying that? In other words, it implies that these pieces of meat, even though they could have been larger, okay, were clearly not designated for the Mizbeach, but they were designated for eating purposes. Okay. Now, we come to a new piece in our Gemara, and this is a famous selection. Okay, Teisha Chanuyot. There are 9 stores, Mochrot Basar Nevela, that sell meat that is Nevela meat. V'achat Mocheret Basar Shchuta, and one sells meat that has been validly slaughtered. Nitchalfulo, and the owner forgets, mixes them up. Choshesh, we have to have the owner have a concern that perhaps he has nevela meat instead of kosher slaughtered meat. Ulinim seit, okay, but if we realize and know that the meat was found, okay, what's the situation there? Holchin achar haro. There, when the meat is found in the street, and you simply can't determine for sure which of the stores it came from, Holchim achar harov, we go after the majority. And since in that case, the majority of the stores were nevela, we're going to declare that meat nevela. Flip the argument now. Teisha chanuyot, mochrot basar shchuta. We have 9 stores that sell kosher slaughtered meat. V'achat mocheret basar nevela, and only one store sells treif, carcass meat, non-kosher slaughtered. Nitchalfulo, again, the owner becomes mixed up, he's not sure. Choshesh, we have to be concerned lest what the status is, might it be nevela. Ulinim seit, but if it's meat that is found, holchin echar harov, here again, we can follow the majority and say that meat is probably kosher. So, in response to these, I guess we'll call it a braita. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, hanimtza biyad nachri. What about meat, he says, that was found in the control, the hand of a Gentile? Okay. Kinimtza b'paltaya. That is similar to meat that is found in the public square. Okay. And therefore, absolutely, we have a chashash. We have a concern about it. Okay. Now, what happens? Rabbi Lezer be Rabbi Chagai. Okay. A story to try to clarify this issue of meat that is found in the hands of the Gentile. So Rabbi Eliezer tells us the following, right? He's the son of Rabbi Chagai, okay? And what happens? Hava mesamech Rabbi Mana. He was walking with Rabbi Mana, and he was helping hold him up. Maybe he's an older man, okay, whatever. So what happens, right? Hama lechad aramai mikata min suse. And says the Gemara, as they were walking, they saw that a certain Aramai may mean Aramaean, but here it means Roman, non-Jew. Okay, and what was this person doing? He took assume a knife, and sliced off a piece of the hide of the animal from his horse. Umafik lebara, and he took it out, okay, and apparently brought it into the market. Amarle, okay, so he said to him, right, Chada he, the Amar Rabbi Yochanan, okay, you saw, is this what Rabbi Yochanan was implying when he said, hanimtza'a biyad nachri knimtza'a b'paltaya. When Rabbi Yochanan said that one who finds meat in the hand of a Gentile is like finding it in the public plaza. So Rabbi Mana answers him, Amar le, Kain, Amar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi, Rabbeinu, or Rabbi. Okay, yes, he says, so answered Rabbi Yossi, my teacher. V'hein shera'u oto yotzei mimikulin shel Yisrael. He says, and particularly, he says, this is a situation, if we saw him coming out of a store, okay, that could have been belonging to a Jew. Okay, so we now come to another story. Okay? Chad Barnash, but Tzipporin. So this story tells us that there was once a person who lived in right? Azil by Mizvan Kupad Min Tavcha. Okay, he went and he was going to be purchasing, okay, some meat, a piece of meat from the butcher. Okay, Velo Yahavle, she says, and what happened? Okay, that the butcher did not give him any meat. Okay. Amale, he said to him, the man who wanted to buy it, Lechad Romai, Va'aitele. He convinced a Gentile to go in and buy the meat for him, and the Gentile went in and bought the meat and brought it to him. So then the purchaser, original purchaser, goes in and he says to the butcher, Amale, lo nisbeit al karche, okay, basically saying to him, didn't I take meat from you against your will, so to speak? Amale, and the butcher answered him, Velav basar de nevela yahavitle, and didn't I give him non-kosher meat? In other words, meat that was nevela meat. Right? So in other words, you think you tricked me, I tricked you. Now the Gemara tells us, Rabbi Yirmiyah, b'shem Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Yirmiyah telling us in regards to this kind of an incident, okay, Maaseh ba'lefnei Rebbe, that this particular incident came before Rebbe for adjudication. Va'amar lo kula mine mesar mikulin de tziporin. He says that it's not my ability, not my authority, to be able to render all of the markets, all of the stores in the city of Tzipori, treif, prohibited because of this one incident. So, what happens? Gemara is not finished, however, with the story, right? And it goes us to tell us more. Rav, Nachat Litman. Rav, remember, was the first generation from Eretz Yisrael. He went to Babylonia, okay, and became the authority after having studied with, in Israel. So he went down to Babylonia. Chamatun Mekilin v'chamar alehin. He saw that they were lenient when it comes to the sale and handling of meat, okay, and therefore he became more stringent for them. Chad Barnash Azal. Okay, so our story continues just briefly. So one person went, right? And what did they do? By Mishizka Iskupte Bego Nahara. He wanted to go and wash his meat in the river. V'in shata, and what happened is he washed some of the meat, but put a piece or two down, and he forgot them. Va'azile, and he went away. Chazar, he came back. Bai min Sabina. Okay? And he came back and he wanted to retrieve the meat, to take it back. Amar le Rav, says Rav, Asur lach. It's forbidden to you, that meat. Right? Dina Amar, because I say as follows. Hahi shataf nara va'aite hore denevela tachtoi. Because it's possible, he says, that the river could have washed away your original piece of meat and instead brought a piece of nevela meat in its place. Okay? Gemara is going to continue, okay, which we'll do on our own, okay, with a couple of other examples of stories, of incidents, okay, to try to clarify, okay, these kinds of situations where we said, what's the status of found meat or found items, okay? Do we say that it's acceptable for the person, or do we say no, that that's not the case? So we'll stop right there today, okay, and wish everybody a good Shabbos and stay well.
Shabbos, Rabbi, thank you very much. Shabbos to everyone. Be well.